Joining us now is Lars Larson of the Lars Larson Show on behalf of All Family Pharmacy. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side.
I'm glad to do it. And there's a lot going on these days, isn't there?
Oh, there's so much news in this 24/7 news cycle. Let's tackle a few of those things in just a minute. But first, what is that drew you to All Family Pharmacy even in the first place?
I got to tell you something. I have to take maintenance meds when you get to be my age. I know you're a kid, but when you get to be my age, you got to take a few metformin and things like that. And it really makes it very, very convenient. And of course, there was a time 5 years ago where I was looking for any source for ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. And simply, I had doctors telling me, I can't write you a script and the pharmacy won't fill it anyway because the government has taken your right away. All Family Pharmacy, I'm proud that they push back on that and say, you have a right to go out and seek medical care. And what's crazy about it is it used to be that medicine was constantly saying, well, get a second opinion, get a third opinion. And yet now what we have is sort of this top down, whatever the government says, that's what you're going to do. Except that now, 5 years later, we all have the experience of saying, well, they were wrong about all that, weren't they?
Exactly. And so when you look at like healthcare and giant corporations still having a lot of that power, how important is it really to have a place like All Family Pharmacy? I know you just said about getting the specific medications, but really they're independent. They're not taking orders from DC. They're not taking orders from Wall Street. Pretty cool stuff.
It is very cool stuff, and it's really what I admire most about America, and that is that you've got freedoms in America. They're God-given freedoms protected by the Constitution, but they're not a grant from the Constitution. You have those freedoms, and it always worries me when the government steps in and says, yeah, we're going to trade a little bit of your freedom for more security. Franklin warned us about that a long, long time ago, said, don't make that trade. It's a bad deal in the long run.
Yeah, that's what it seems like the pharmacy is doing. All family pharmacies, they're actually putting the power back into the hands of the people to say, hey, okay, if I want that, I can get that. And that's in the face of any doctors or pharmacists that say, ivermectin's not for this, but you can get it through All Family Pharmacy. That's pretty awesome
You know,
stuff.
I literally, my wife was with my sister-in-law, and she was seeing a doctor a couple of years ago, and she asked about ivermectin. And this doctor, or it might have been a PA, literally turned to her as a customer, a patient, who no longer get treated like patients anymore, and said, why? Are you a horse? And I thought, boy, if somebody in a retail store were to treat you that way, you say, I'm never going back. Oh, you'd either call for the manager or you'd say, I'm never going back to that store again. They don't treat us like customers. I think a lot of healthcare does not treat those of us who are paying thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a year for health insurance plans, and then you get treated like dirt when you show up to actually get some of the service that you've already paid for. I mean, there is a reason why most of us, if you eat a meal at a restaurant, you pay at the end of the meal. If you're putting a roof on your house, you pay when the job is done. And why? Because that makes sure that the job gets done. If hospitals and clinics and doctors started treating us like patients, if we said, you know what, doc, if I'm not happy with the service you give me, yeah, I'm not going to pay you, because you're allowed to do that with any business.
That's so true. That's such a good point there. And that's a terrible story with your family member, with that doctor saying that. That's unbelievable stuff. And the question, though, is should Americans be able to choose off-label treatments? You were talking about ivermectin before. How about hydroxychloroquine? Or is it informed consent no longer enough?
Well, I think they should be able to, because here's the funny thing. They call it the practice of medicine. And for decades as a reporter, I've had doctors say, Lars, the reason they call it that is not because we're practicing, but because we're saying, I've got a different idea for how to treat this particular illness. And we've seen literally movies. What was the one? Oh, it was something's oil. It was a little boy who had a problem, and his parents went to all the doctors, and they said, we don't have any way to treat it. And one doctor said, I have an idea. Lorenzo's oil. That's what it was called. And it's about a true story. And this doctor said, this is a different way to treat it. Now, if you want to go back to the times where if you broke from conventional orthodoxy, that they'd make you drink hemlock, or they'd kill you, hang you upside down until you die. We're not in that kind of world. And when doctors themselves say, if you don't like my opinion, go and get a second or third opinion, and then you make the decision. And there are plenty of people I've known personally, say you have cancer, and the doctor says the best thing for you is, radiation, but we could do chemo. And you say, okay, I'm going to do chemo. Well, even though the doctor has told you radiation is the best course, you're going to choose chemo. Or maybe you choose you know what? If I'm going to have 6 miserable months, but I live 5 months without it, why don't I do the 5 months without it, enjoy my time with family and friends? And even people like, I think, Steve Jobs, the guy who founded Apple, made a huge mistake by rejecting conventional treatment and going with only alternatives. But it was his right to say, I choose this path. And if it works out well, good. If it doesn't work out well, it's my choice. Would you rather have the government simply impose all the choices like a nanny and say, we know what's best for you? We're not children, and the government has no right to tell us what to do. Now, so that's my, if you get me going, I'm just going to keep on going on stuff like that.
That's okay. We have a little bit of time for that, of course, Lars. It's great to have you again. Join us on Right Side. I know this is the second time that we've connected here, and it's just great to hear from someone like you that's on the right side of history. And then also, talking on behalf of All Family Pharmacy, when we look at some of the articles out there right now about COVID, there's this new variant out there. I'm actually looking at a headline now, The Hill. It says, "What to know about the new Nimbus COVID variant." What do you think about that, first of all? I mean, do you think this is a genuine health response, or are we watching a replay of overreach and fear-driven messaging?
I think it's more of the latter, and I'll tell you why. Because over the last 4 years, we saw multiple occasions where they said, "Oh my God, there's this new one coming at us right now. It's going to be," and then a few months later, you say, "What happened to that?" And I'll tell you one of the things I think mainstream media, yeah, the usual suspects we're talking about, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, CNN, MSDNC, and the rest, they don't want to say, although they should, it's part of the story. If you have government health officials saying there's another pandemic coming and then it doesn't emerge, the fact that it didn't emerge is as much a story as if it had emerged. And we keep being told it's going to be bird flu, it's going to be monkeypox. And of course, with monkeypox, they don't even bother to tell you that there is usually one way that monkeypox is transmitted, and the vast majority of Americans don't do that kind of thing. And if, since you've got a family audience, I don't want to get into the details, but you can look them up if you want to. Almost everybody with monkeypox got it one way. And since I don't engage in that, and most of the people I know don't, then it's not a problem for me. But to be constantly scaring the population, to me, it does start to remind you of, say, 1984, A Brave New World, where you're saying there's this boogeyman out there and he's going to get us. We should be aware of that when it comes to health. We should be aware of it even when it comes to foreign adversaries. Although I do think there are some legitimate bad guys out there on the planet, China, North Korea, Iran, and others. But being scared by boogeymen constantly is a way to control people. And we've had too much of that stuff, and Americans have had it up to here.
That is 100% correct, accurate. And your years of journalism, your years in media, understanding that and being, in the forefront of that with your own show, that's pretty awesome stuff to hear. Also,
thank you.
The pharmacies that are out there across this country, why out of all of them pick All Family Pharmacy? Why did you do that?
Well, I'm going to tell you why, because I've had the experience. At one point, my wife had an issue, and her doctor said, you should be on this, but be sure to get the brand name variant of this. And I said, we can afford the difference in price. It wasn't gigantic. And I walked into the pharmacy and I said, I'd like this, the drug, but I'd like the, this one, whatever formulation it was that the doctor had recommended. Pharmacy said, we don't carry it. And I said, well, hold on. It was part of a chain. It wasn't, CVS or Walgreens. I said, do any of your other stores? No, nobody carries it because Medicaid and Medicare don't carry it. So therefore, we don't carry it because we don't have any need for it. We wouldn't be filling the prescription and it would age out on the shelf. And you think, hold on, my choices are now being limited because government tells the pharmacies, the big chains of pharmacies, these are the things we're going to cover. And if the government decides not to cover it, then there's no reason for the pharmacy to stock it. Well, then that's taken choice away from me. So if I go to any of the conventional pharmacies, that's what they do. All Family is different.
It is. I mean, you see it with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN here. Right now, there's this sale, it looks like, until the end of this month, 20% off. So it's great to see it. Lars Larson of The Lars Larson Show, thanks for speaking on behalf of All Family Pharmacy. Any last couple things you want to just say to the American
I could
people?
say allfamilypharmacy.com/Lars.
There you go. Perfect. We'll both of them. Good stuff. Lars Larson, thank you so much for joining us again here on Right Side.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir.